It is Sunday, June the 15th, 2025, 1000 hours here on the East Coast. This is Coffee with Frankie. So let's get it started with the theme song.
Frankie from Flatbush rides the Brooklyn line. Got a swagger sharp like a vintage wine. Everybody knows his name from porch to stoop. Hustle and dreams in every loop. In the park he struts, hits the handball wall. Echoes hear the stories when the shadows fall. Got 1,000 tales and a confident grin. On the streets of Flatbush where legends begin. Frankie from Flatbush got the city glow, lighting up the borough with his every show. He's the heart of Brooklyn, never laying low. Frankie from Flatbush, always on the go. Bodega lights flicker when Frankie's near. He's got the rhythm, everybody cheers. Corner talks and sidewalk chalks his fame. In the Flatbush breeze you'll hear his name. Underneath the subway hum, the magic's real. Frankie's moves got that electric feel. From Atlantic Avenue to the urban hill, Flatbush Frankie's giving you a thrill. Frankie from Flatbush got the city glow, lighting up the borough with his every show. He's the heart of Brooklyn, never laying low. Frankie from Flatbush, always on the go. Bodega lights flicker when Frankie's near, lighting up the borough with his every show. He's the heart of Brooklyn, never laying low. Frankie from Flatbush, always on the go. Frankie from Flatbush got the city glow, lighting up the borough with his every show. He's the heart of Brooklyn, never laying low. Frankie from Flatbush, always on the go. Always on the go. Always on the go.
All right, Sunday, June the 15th, Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. Let me know if you can see and hear me okay before we get started with the show. Phil Adams is here. Greetings to the famous Frankie family. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, especially those who have fathers, still have fathers, and memories to those who don't. Respect. Well said, Phil. Good morning. Joe Mike is here. Good morning, Frankie. Did you see the video of grass at MetLife Stadium? Why is it good enough for the World Cup and not Jets and Giants fans? Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about that. That's one of the big stories, but I'll tell you why. It's because the soccer players don't stand for it. The soccer players say it's either grass or we're not playing. See you later. And they're willing to stand on that. Again, the football players have a big problem as opposed to baseball players, soccer players, basketball players. They can't be as demanding because they have short, little, tiny careers. That's the problem. They're not willing to. I mean, think about a soccer player. Soccer career is probably, on average, a very long time. I mean, there's very little contact in soccer. You know, you're just running around kicking a ball. It's not football. So the players can be demanding, and if the owners don't give it to them, then they just say, all right, we're not playing. We'll sit out a year, no problem. The NFL football players can't do that. They have a big problem, and we've been talking about this. It's a collective bargaining agreement issue, and we're going to see if this iteration of NFLPA leadership has gotten to the point where they can do that and say, no, we're standing on business. If you don't give us all grass fields, then we're going to sit out. That's the only way you can make the owners respect you on a big issue like that that's going to actually cost them a lot of money. And if they don't, then they won't get it. And if they do, then they will. But that's the difference. Soccer players can sit out. Baseball players can sit. That's why baseball players have guaranteed contracts. Why do baseball players have 100% guaranteed contracts? Because they negotiated for it and they could sit out a year because they generally have, on average, longer careers. The NFL is a very violent sport and guys have short, tiny little careers on average. And so they don't have as much bargaining power because they don't have that threat of a year-long strike like these other places. That's a problem. So they can put it in there. And the other issue is, Joe, like, so they could put it in there. They're putting grass in for the soccer games, so they could have it there. But the other problem is the issue of having two teams in the same stadium. It's very difficult to turn the stadium around for like last year. I think there was one or two times when the Jets played like on a Sunday, and the Giants at home, and the Giants played on a Monday. And you can only turn the stadium around like that, like on a Monday night or something. You can only turn the stadium around like that with turf. You can't really do that with grass. So the other problem is the first decision that Woody made which was partnering up with the Giants. Now they do the same thing in LA with the Chargers and the Rams, and they have turf. But that's the additional thing. Even if Woody wanted to, you can't I don't think you could realistically do it with two teams in there. Again, unless the player said you must do this, and then Woody would have to decide, all right, do we get our own stadium or do we just mess with the schedule where there's never a turnaround like that, and the NFL wouldn't like that. So that's the real issue. And we're going to talk about some more soccer stuff. We're going to need Phil Adams to help us. We got some other headlines to talk about on this Sunday. But that's the general issue, Joe Mike. Todd is here. Good morning. Phil Adams says, okay, everything's good, 100%. Excellent. Good to hear that. JoJo is here. JoJo was a man from Tucson, Arizona. Good morning to everyone, including JoJo. Get back, JoJo. Swamp Ranger's here. My dad went to go get milk from the store 25 years ago. Mom should be home today. Yeah, he might be dead and gone, as the song goes. Party with Peg and Artie. Good morning, Party with Peg and Artie. I like your username there. It's always a party with Peg and Artie. All right. Harlan Abraham's here. Greetings from across the pond to Phil Adams. Yeah, we're going to need Phil Adams to help us out here in a second. Swamp Ranger says the soccer fields are a lot softer. Well, I don't know about that. We can have so for example at Tottenham Hotspur, they have a grass stadium that they could put in for football, and the NFL says no, thank you, we don't want it. So it can be done. It's not a technical issue. It certainly can be done. Jet 41, morning, Frankie. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Father's Day, and hope everybody's well and good. We do have some news to go over. We're going to need Phil Adams to help us out. Because it does have to do with soccer and Woody Johnson. All right, let's take a look at our first item here. Let's see if we can screen share. Yeah. Report. News item. Sources. Jets owner Johnson, that's Woody Johnson, eyes Crystal Palace. Doesn't that sound wonderful? A palace full of crystals. Stake amid UEL fears. Oh, there's some fears going on. Woody Johnson, owner of the Jets, in talks over 200 million pounds. That's $272 million. Investment in Crystal Palace. Sources told ESPN a deal that could clear the path for the FA Cup. What's the FA Cup, Phil? Something football. The Football Cup winners to participate in next season's UEFA Europa League. What? So Palace, who won their first ever major trophy by defeating Manchester City In May's FA Cup final at Wembley are at risk of being barred from the Europa League due to multi-club ownership rule violation. Somebody violated the rules. What's going on here? Minority stakeholder John Texter, Johnny Text to his friends, also owns a majority stake in Ligue 1 team in Lyon. That's in France. Although Texter has no day-to-day involvement in the running of Palace, who are controlled by Chairman Steve Parish and U.S. investors Josh Harris, that's important, and David Blitzer, UEFA rules prevent two teams with the same ownership playing in the same competition unless shares in one club are placed into a blind trust. Johnny Texts failed to place his shares in such a vehicle by the deadline. What a moron. More than 2 months before Palace secured Europa League qualification by winning the FA Cup. Phil Adams says, FA Cup, oldest club cup on the planet. Yeah, but what does FA stand for? Football, what? Something? Oldest club cup on the planet. All right. So, look, here's Woody. He wants to get involved. However, sources have said that Texter, Johnny Texts, whose Eagle football group also includes Belgian club Daring Brussels and Brazilian team Botafogo, is ready to sell his 43% stake in Palace with Johnson, the leading candidate to thrash out a deal. Johnson, 78, served as an ambassador to the UK, and he made a failed bid to buy Chelsea after the previous owner, Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich, was sanctioned by the UK government following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Well, what did he have to do with it? Why are you sanctioning me? I didn't invade anybody. That's what I would have said. Not that it would have made a difference. I didn't tell them to invade. Johnson has previously declared himself to be a Chelsea supporter. But, when business is business. Johnson has previously declared himself. Oh, should Texter offload his shares, sources have said that it would resolve the multi-club ownership issues that threaten the team's place in next season's Europa League. Oh, we can't threaten that. For sure. Johnson purchased the Jets in 2000 for just $635 million. A very, very good deal. Cheap, you might say. In 2024, the franchise was valued at $6.8 billion, according to Sportico. Under Johnson's ownership, the Jets' record is 173 and 231, which ranks 26th out of the 32 teams. So basically, you can be a shitty team for freaking 25 years, and you get a 10x evaluation of your club. Earlier this year, they throw this in, just kicking the balls. Johnson was the only NFL owner to receive an F grade in the NFL Players Association annual team report card. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers gave him an F minus. He dismissed the findings, questioning the validity of the survey. Previously, he acknowledged he needed to improve as an owner. Well, at least they throw that in there. And Dick Chimney was involved in this report. Okay, so that's where the Dick Chimney stuff comes in. Phil says Crystal Palace FC was founded in 1861, turned pro in 1905, based in South London, rough as F. If Woody thinks Jets fans hates him, Palace fans will burn him at the stake. Well, that's interesting, but he's going to be a minority owner. So to me, this is interesting on a couple of levels. So number one, if Woody buys this 43% stake, that means $275 million out the door in cashola. Straight cash, homie, as we say in the business world. That means $272 million out of Woody Johnson's pocket. But he gains for that $272 million a 43% stake in this Crystal Palace FC football club, founded in this old club that Phil is telling us it's in South London. You don't want to be. There might be some ruffians. There might be some shenanigans going on in South London. I wouldn't want to be a rubbish bin in South London tonight. But Then he would own 43% of a soccer team, and I was wondering why he hadn't owned a soccer team yet. But he tried to get Chelsea. Now he's trying to get Crystal Palace. Um, and he would then be partners with Josh Harris and David Blitzer. Who are they? Who is, chat, who's Josh Harris and David Blitzer? Who are they? Are they people we should know about? Or are they just a couple of bums? I think we should probably know who they are because they are involved in the NFL. And since there doesn't seem to be anybody responding in the chat, I will tell you that they are the part owners, the majority owners of the new Washington Commanders team. So this is part of the group that bought the Commanders and is doing all the right things with the Commanders that have Commander fans, traditional Redskin fans, over the moon with all of the improvements they've made from the previous dum-dum in charge. So now Woody would be partners with these guys. So I think that's a positive. He needs more billionaire buddies who know what the hell they're doing. Maybe he could learn a thing or two. So that's a good thing. And then secondly, maybe as he gets more involved with these soccer clubs, he would realize maybe a little bit more intensely this issue of grass versus turf. I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch. I mean, I'm sure he probably already knows about it. And like Swamp Ranger said, it's a little bit different in terms of the pounding that the turf takes when you just have, these light, skinny guys running on it and kicking a ball. It's a lot different than having these 300 pounders constantly hitting the turf. But it can be certainly done. It's not impossible. Certainly can be done, but it is a little bit different. But I would think that maybe by having this ownership in the soccer, maybe it could rub off on him this idea that players shouldn't be playing on turf under any circumstances. Now, in line with that, we also have. Let's stop sharing this. We also have some other things to look at. Not this. Where did I want to look at? Do. Just no, it's not here. I don't want to look here. I want to look here. Oh, yeah, right here. Let's go to Frankie from Flatbush X account. Let's go here. There's a picture of me in college, when I used to be cool. But look at this. The AFCA is some sort of affiliate for turf. Now, and I put out a tweet saying Turf Mafia. What is the AFCA? What is the AFCA? Anybody know? Well, the AFCA is the American Football Coaches Association. So that's the official association of all the coaches. Every coach that's a professional coach is a member of the AFCA. And they're putting out tweets saying, look at these wonderful AstroTurf fields. You could get it in blue. You could get it in yellow. You could get it in red. You could get it in gray and black. It's amazing. Look at these incredible AstroTurf fields. This is the official coaching association putting this out. So the other aspect of all this, which I have talked about previously a lot and gotten death threats over, is that there's a lot of people who make millions and billions and billions and billions of dollars over these turf fields. Think about how many turf fields there are in America alone when you think about all the high school fields and all of the colleges and all the junior colleges and there's so many fields out there. It's amazing. It's a billion dollar business. It's a lot of money. And if you start going around saying maybe we should have grass instead of these stupid fields that players bounce off of and break their ankles and 40+ % increase in injuries, well, they're going to get very upset and they're going to shut you down and they're going to give you death threats, which I have received. Not that anybody cares, but um, so it's just weird that you have the coaching association shilling for the AstroTurf industry. It's very, very strange. But it goes to show you the number of things and tendrils that are connected to the AstroTurf industry, the artificial turf industry. There's a lot of them and things that you wouldn't necessarily think, like the Coaches Association. And this is the link to that. And then you have this and the NFLPA. So the NFLPA put out a tweet about about this when they're changing the pitch, all grass pitch. They call it a pitch, installed at MetLife Stadium ahead of the World Cup, and that's all they did. And I think the Players Association just has to go way, way farther than they do. I don't think they're putting enough emphasis on this. They have a lot of issues, of course, that they need to negotiate with management and so forth and so on. But if they really want this, that's what it's going to take. And as I've said for many, many months, you heard it from me first. Years ago, started talking about this before anybody ever was. And for those old timers who remember, and so we'll just have to see. But that's what it's going to take. It's not going to happen. And I think, Woody is getting involved with this soccer team, and I've said also that he should look into trying to do something with Stevie Cohen over there in Queens. And maybe he is, maybe he's not. But one of the mistakes he made was partnering with the Giants. It makes financial sense. It's logical. But at the same time, the Jets need their own stadium. And you could still have MetLife, Get a Life Stadium there. It's one of the top grossing stadiums in the world for all the events that go there. A lot of concerts go there. But you could still keep that there, and then you could have another one in Queens. I mean, let the Giants play there, and whatever other events want to go there, fine. But then the Jets should be playing in Queens, and then there should just be another stadium in Queens for multi-purpose. I don't know, but it's a complicated issue. You would hope that the business people on Woody's team are getting him interested in this, but we'll just have to wait and see. Joe Mike says Woody should be utilizing the minorities to offset Chris Bear's. I don't understand what this means. Woody should be utilizing the minority ownership stake to help offset. Well, if you're saying he should sell minority shares in the Jets, I would agree. Because one of the things about this purchase, if it goes through, that's $272 million less that Woody has in cash. That's important for players like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner and anybody else who want to sign long term, because those contracts require cash commitments. Now, Woody's got plenty of money, but I think Woody should sell a minority stake. You're seeing a lot of teams sell minority stakes. You give up 6%, 10%, 7%, 5%, and you get a lot of cash. And that you saw the 49ers do that. And the 49ers are also heavily involved in soccer as well, the owners. And then they went and signed all their people. They signed Warner, they signed Birdie, they signed all their people that they wanted to keep. So George Kittle. And that requires a large cash commitment. They got the large cash commitment from selling minority stakes of the 49ers. And then they also went and bought some soccer team, one of the soccer teams. So Phil says, Woody will make plenty of money at Palace. The Premier League is a cash cow. 11 of 20 teams are USA owned. Well, that's also something that's interesting. I was thinking about that in terms of how these teams are run and what kind of cash they generate. So, and how much cash you can take out of them. As an owner, it's a little tricky. You can make money, but it's money on paper. It doesn't mean it's cash. It's accounting paper. accounting money sometimes, and then sometimes you can take cash out. So it's not about money or capital or resource. It's about cash, straight cash, homie. We got to know how much cash Woody would get out of it. Yes, it'll make him richer over time. It's a good investment for sure. But how much cash on an annual basis can he take out? That's an open question. I don't know the answer to. But we got to think about the straight cash, because when you sign these players to a big signing bonus, that's a signing bonus that has to be paid in cashola to the player. Now, you can structure it where they get it over a certain period of time, but even then, you have to put it in an escrow account. So you got to take the cashola, put it in an escrow account, and store it there, which owners do not like doing. But it's basically there to protect the player, to make sure you're not going to screw them. If you say, all right, we're going to give you $60 million signing bonus, but you're going to get $20 million this year, $20 million next year, $20 million the year after. And the player's like, all right, whatever. $20 million a year sounds good to me. But then they don't want you to screw them. So they say, all right, put the 60 in an escrow account where it doesn't earn interest. That's why owners don't like it. And it sits there and, or doesn't earn a lot of interest. It probably earns some. I don't know. I'm not an expert on escrow. But it goes into this account, and then so that way it's there, and the player knows he's going to get it. You can't say, "Hey, I'm bankrupt. I can't pay you." It's a protection. So that's an interesting thought. Why doesn't now Woody does not seem to be open to selling any percentage of the Jets. We've not seen any reporting on that at all. Of course, with the beat reporters we have, they're not going to ask those type of questions. And Woody doesn't get in front of the media very often. Some of these owners, they get in front of the media and they actually get people to care about them, or to at least have opinions. Like, you say what you want about Jerry Jones, for example. He's in front of the media all the time, and a lot of people hate Jerry Jones, but he generates buzz, and he does answer the question. He may not give you the answers you like, but he at least is accountable, right? And he's there, and he's answering questions, and he's talking to the media on a regular basis. Same thing with Stephen Jones, the Jones family. And Woody never talks to the media, hardly ever. It's a little weird. Especially when you want to try to shape public opinion about you. I mean, everybody hates Woody for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that he doesn't talk that much. When he does talk, he says stupid stuff, so you wish he would have better PR people to tell him what to say. But nonetheless, you'd think you'd want to come up with some sort of PR strategy to get people to at least like you. I mean, you see Robert Kraft all the time with the Patriots doing stuff like they're putting up a freaking statue to Tom Brady. Then they're celebrating David Andrews. Then they're celebrating this guy. They're celebrating that guy. There's all this celebrating going on, and Robert Kraft is, sort of always in the news. They have documentaries about him and this and that. Not Woody. Why don't we celebrate our people more? Well, we put people in the Ring of Honor occasionally, but we need to put there should be a statue of Joe Klecko. Where's the Klecko statue outside of Get a Life Stadium? Where's that? Can we get that? What about Joe Namath? Put a Joe Namath frickin' statue somewhere. Is there a Joe Namath statue out there? Why not? Oh, because we're sharing it with the Giants, don't you know? All right, well, but the Giants can put some statues. Put a statue of Phil Simms and put a statue of Lawrence Taylor, put a statue of him snorting some cocaine. That'd be a nice statue of Lawrence Taylor. Put a statue of the helmet catch. How about that? But that's interesting, man. I mean, so when we say cash cow, we got to be careful. A cash cow business, Phil Adams, is like Walmart. The biggest cash cow business in the world is Walmart. And that's why the Denver Broncos have an extreme advantage over a lot of these teams, because the owners of the Denver Broncos now are the Walmart people. And the Walmart people, in addition to being rich and wealthy and having assets and real estate and stocks and bonds, they have so much cash that it's almost crazy, which they can then deploy however they want. And you need cash for certain things. Cash, not capital, not real estate, not tied up in stocks and bonds. This will mature in 30 years. I'm going to be super rich because these bonds are going to mature. Okay, but you can't do anything with the capital right now. No. You need cashola. Straight cash, homie. Cash, cash, cash. Uh, so we don't know. It may make a lot of money, it may be a great business, but we don't know if it's technically a cash cow. When we say something's a cash cow business, that means free cash flow. At the end of the day, you have excellent free cash, what's called free cash flow after EBITDA and all of that. After all the accounting, all the cash shola that comes to the owners. Now maybe it is, I don't know, but like Walmart is an example of a cash intensive business. Other businesses are great businesses. They have a lot of revenue, but they have a lot of expenses. They have a lot of money tied up in equipment and this and that. Walmart, tons and tons of cash. Harlan says, I don't hate Woody Johnson. Wish he would finally find the right person to run the Jets. Yeah, but you might be the exception, Harlan. The Jet fan, your average Jet fan hates Woody Johnson. And you can understand why. He makes it very easy for Jet fans to hate him. And that's, I don't understand why people just can't look around and look for examples. Look at the way Robert Kraft does it. Look at the way Josh Harris is doing. Look what Josh Harris has done with the Commanders. I mean, our Commander fans have to be over the moon with this guy. He came in there and he did the same thing with 76ers, though they're not having as much success at the moment. But I think 76er fans would tell you the same thing. Josh Harris is the guy. He owns the 76ers. He owns the Commanders. He's part of a group that owns these teams. But he's like the lead guy. And I think fans of those teams would say, this guy's amazing. And one of the reasons he's amazing is because when he goes on podcasts or he does media, he says they're all the right things. And you can tell he has a way that he will always answer a question that is true, but it puts the correct spin on anything and everything. And it's kind of amazing. I would recommend listening to, in particular, Alex Rodriguez has a podcast now. It's called The Deal. And I wouldn't listen to that podcast a lot, but Josh Harris was on there. Listen to that interview. It's Alex Rodriguez, one of his business partners, and they're interviewing Josh Harris. And just listen to the way he answers questions. Compare that to the way frickin' Woody Johnson answers questions, and the framing, how he frames the answer. And that is how you should do it. That is clearly the way these owners are going to have to be doing it. And if you want to get the fans on your side, which Woody should want, because a lot of the fans have the pitchforks out for Woody, especially right now, and the way everything happened with Aaron Rodgers and all that. So, I don't understand why a guy like that can't look around for examples if he doesn't know how to do it. All right, who's doing it right? Let me model my behavior based on that. That's what I would do if I didn't know how to do it. Who's doing it good? Just model the behavior, do it that way. It's like so simple. Harlan said, I remember after JD's first season with the Jets, many fans wanted to give him a lifetime contract. Yeah, that's true because he was doing good. And I think he would have done much better if not for the meddling. I mean, once Aaron Rodgers got involved, then the ownership got involved, the money men got involved, and screwed up a lot of the decisions that JD made, I think, in my opinion. If Woody would have stayed out and let Saleh and Douglas do what they wanted, I think it would have been a much better outcome. But then again, he screwed up the Zach Wilson pick, and that's going to always, always haunt him. And that's just the way it is. Jets worldwide. How much is 1% of the Jets organization? Want to go halvesies? No. Well, think about it, Jets worldwide. They said that let's just make it round number. $7 billion is the valuation. What's 1% of $7 billion? We don't got that kind of money. we don't got that kind of money, Jets worldwide. 1% of $7 billion. That's what it would cost you if you want to get in on it. You got to be filthy rich, even just to get a 1% stake. Phil says the money taken from Man U by Glazers at Bucks was used to pay Tom Brady. They are hated by all Man United fans. They rarely visit UK for their own safety. The Glazers, you mean? The money taken from Man U by the Glazers, yeah, so the Glazers own the Tampa Bay Bucks, was used to pay Tom Brady. Well, so what? The Glazers own Man U, and they took the money that from an entity they owned and brought it over to pay Brady. Who cares? Why are they hated? They rarely visit the UK because I can tell you, Phil Adams, that the Glazers down here in Tampa Bay have a great reputation here in Florida. They do a lot of charitable work. They're generally considered good owners for the NFL. I mean, if they own a team and they generate profits from the organization and then they have that money and then they take it and move it over here to another of their businesses, why would anybody not like that? I don't understand. It's their business. They're the owners. That's what happens. Party says find a QB. Yeah, that's the problem. Look at all the teams that are trying to find a QB in the NFL. It's about half the league. Half the league is in the middle zone where they got a young guy trying, or they're in the uh, veteran, circle cycle. The Sam Darnolds, Geno Smiths of the world, or the team's got a young guy that they think can make it, like the Bears and the Panthers, and those teams thinking they got a young guy, and the Titans now with Cam Ward, or you got your guy, and then half the teams have their guy. So it's hard. It's hard to find, obviously. Woody Johnson has done everything he could do to win. Well, I wouldn't say that. One thing I would say is that he needs to take a hands-off approach. He's done a lot of good things, I would say, Harlan, and I like the positivity here because everybody focuses on the negativity. He's done a lot of dumb things, and when he gets involved and he panics, I think what happened with the Rodgers thing is Zach Wilson didn't work out. He got pissed about that. Then we went all in on Aaron Rodgers, and you know, uh, I think everything from that point on, he took a lot of the control away from Joe Douglas. You think Joe Douglas wanted to sign Randall Cobb and Billy Turner and these people and all of that and cater the whole organization to Aaron Rodgers? You think Joe Douglas wanted to do that? I don't. But that's what happened because the money people saw an opportunity. They were like, man, we got this team. It's pretty good. It's young. We thought we had it with Zach. He didn't work out. Now we have an opportunity to get Aaron Rodgers. That's a marketing bonanza, and all the fans went crazy when we got Aaron Rodgers, if you remember. And then they catered everything to Rodgers, and that was the first mistake. And then they just kept going down that road. And then even with that, it probably could have worked out if Rodgers didn't pop his Achilles. On the turf. I will remind you, on the turf. Not that that was a proximate cause, but the more you play on turf, the more wear and tear you get, and then eventually, pop goes the weasel. Pop goes the weasel. All right. Next news. Let's talk about the media, shall we? One of my favorite topics on this channel. Let's talk about the media, and let's talk about something I told you guys about months and months ago, that these new media companies are important and should be paid attention to. Here's the headline from Front Office Sports. MLB buys stake in Jomboy Media. What? Major League Baseball buys a stake in Jomboy Media. What? Isn't this guy the guy who does lip reading? What's going on here? Jomboy Media has elevated from what its founder described initially as just a hobby. It's now become much more than that, as I told you guys things like this would, as seen by a new MLB investment. Here's the fellas. Look at these guys. These are guys that are, independent media dudes with Shure microphones. And it's a big business now. This is the Jomboy over here. Major League Baseball it's not letting me see the whole story. Major League Baseball has acquired an undisclosed minority stake. So they gave them cash money for equity in the business in Jomboy Media, a fast growing and often irreverent digital media company. The equity deal sees the league. So Major League Baseball has now invested in these guys here. Looking to extend its presence among baseball content creators, and the agreement would involve Jomboy Media gaining access to league and team IP, participating in merchandise and sponsorship collaborations, and having a presence for some of its content on league platforms. Now, John Boy Media, they have this thing, Talking Giants. Is it John Boy Media? You see some of the stickers this guy has on his computer, Talking Baseball. So they do baseball, they do football, and this is big business. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is these independent media companies. Another one is All City, and then you have small guys like Jets X Factor and so forth. And look at the capital that's now going into this. It's a big capital deal. It's a cash infusion. John Boy Media does have a CEO, okay, some lady out of New Jersey. And these things are going to become real. And that's why All City is going to eat the lunch of people like Jets X Factor who refuses to get capitalized. All City has had multiple rounds of millions and millions of dollars of investment, and Jets X Factor has not, for example. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be competition of all these independent media companies, and the ones who are capitalized are the ones who are going to be able to put out incredible content, and Jets X Factor is going to continue to look like a blog. And so I am putting out a warning to my friends at Jets X Factor who I want to succeed, because I think they have good people there, and Robbie and Joe Blewett in particular. I want them to succeed, and therefore I am begging them to get capitalized from somebody. Venture capital. This is MLB taking capital, acting like a venture capital firm. But it doesn't have to be the NFL. They're not going to do that. But some venture capitalist, someone somewhere who funded All City, some private equity group, some VC group, some angel investor, something. You need money. These company, John Boy Media now is going to go to a whole new level. And All City is going to go to a whole new level. What happens when All City comes for New York? Because they do it city by city. They're doing Philly, they're doing Denver, they're doing all these cities, Dallas. Eventually they're going to come for New York, and they're going to eat the lunch of all these little content creators because they're properly capitalized. And what's also going to happen is that some of the legacy media is going to have a chunk of its business stolen and taken by these little groups that are now capitalized. And now that they have this financial backing, they can get things like press credentials. They can produce some of these exclusive items like, hey, I was in the locker room with no, and that's the only reason you listen to people like Zach Rosenblatt and Diana Rossini and Connor Hughes and those people, is because they have exclusive access to certain things. I was in the locker room. I was doing this. I was doing that. That's the only difference between me and Connor Hughes. Right? I know as much about the Jets as Connor Hughes, but he has a press credential and I don't. I'm not in the locker room. I don't have sources. I don't have people feeding me information. So that's the difference. But now these people are going to come in with capital, and they're going to have all the same credentials, and they're actually going to be good content creators. That's why they got to this point, because they're interesting. They say interesting things. They have interesting perspectives on things, that isn't just a bunch of hooey and bullshit. That's why people have started paying attention to them in the first place. And so the legacy media is going to take a hit. Now, speaking of legacy media, one of the things I do on X, next news item, is I try to dunk on them. But you have to, it's an art form. I got to say, it's an art form. You got to be careful when you try to dunk on the legacy media. What are we talking about? Well, here's one example I wanted to use. Where you gotta, it's an example of you gotta be careful with how you do. You can't be calling people names. You can't be disrespectful and rude because that's not going to get you anywhere. It'll just get you blocked. But Diana Rossini put out something about 5 days ago. Jets corner Sauce Gardner is present for minicamp as the two-time All-Pro seeks a new deal, per sources. Now, she works at The Athletic, which is owned by the New York Times. Think what you want about the New York Times. And then Zach Rosenblatt, who also works at The Athletic, says Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson are both desire and deserve new contracts, but both have been showing up all off season. Reflects well on them and on the culture Aaron Glenn is building too, which is all true. It's not false. But I said, as I try to dunk on these people sometimes, you can't always dunk on them though. I said, good to see DDR still reporting nothing burgers like they matter. And you know I hit the mark because Zach Rosenblatt responded to me. So Zach Rosenblatt is a big deal. He's the Jets reporter for The Athletic, and I am Frankie from Flatbush, a total non-entity that nobody cares about, really, with 24 people in the chat, and not exactly a big powerhouse. So I said, good to see DDR. Now, longtime listeners will know what DDR means, but I didn't outright say what it means here because I didn't want to be super offensive. So it's an art form. But the still reporting nothing burgers part refers to some of her earlier reporting about Aaron Rodgers is going to go to the Vikings, and and that whole drama that played out. And Zach Wilson doesn't want to come into a game; he's too scaredy cat to come into a game. That was false. I mean, just and other nothing burgers like that she's reported in the past. It's not just this story. And Zach Rosenblatt says it does matter. In fact. And so just the fact that Rosenblatt responded tells you I hit the mark because he shouldn't be responding to an idiot like me. He was at an OTA practice last week, and stars around the league hold out at this time of year, which is true, when they want a new deal, which he does. And I said, yeah, but we already knew he was showing up and that the Jets are working on a new deal for him. I know you have to stick up for your colleague, but come on, Zach. And he says we can agree to disagree. So that's the art form. You don't want to be too disrespectful, and so that's the line you have to walk. You can't just call people names and say you're an asshole, and you're not going to get anywhere. So you got to walk a fine line. You have to know what you're talking about because they're going to have the facts, and they have an entire organization behind them. They have money. They have tons of money. The New York Times has tons and tons of money, billions of dollars. Carlos Slim is a minority owner of the Times. Keep this in mind. So you guys know who Carlos Slim is? Do you have any idea? Any clue? Carlos Slim is a minority owner of the New York Times. Just so you know how capitalized they are. But this tells you that he knows I was right because he's trying to stick up for Diana. There's also like a white knight thing going on here with Rosenblatt, like a cuck thing where, hey, if you say anything bad about a woman, they're gonna they're gonna come in and show you how let's defend the female journalist. It's like I don't care if she's a female. I just want her to be a good journalist. So there you go. So legacy media like this is going to fall to some degree. It'll still be around, but new media is going to take over to some degree. Again, it's going to be hard to displace the New York Times, for example. But you even see people like Nick Faria starting to write for Jets X Factor. What does that tell you about his previous employers? They're falling by the wayside. There's no room for. There's not a lot of room for ununique takes and information in this field. You got to do something different, I think. All right, everybody's putting out Father's Day stuff. Just checking the news here. All right. So, a couple other quick things on the news. Jets worldwide, the subtle art of making enemies. Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. You don't want to go overboard because people will defend the journalists as well, especially if they're female. So you got to be careful. Unless you want that smoke, which I really don't. What I want to do is just try and to be honest, what I really want to do is use any platform I have to make those journalists better. So one of the things I did this week was I put out a tweet saying, Aaron Glenn is going to speak to reporters on Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Here are some suggested questions for our beat reporters, and I put a list of questions. Did any of them pay attention and use those questions? No. but that's an example of me dunking on them subtly while also trying to get them to improve. I've also done things like correct their reporting. Dennis Waszak from the AP, for example, cited me when I corrected his reporting. He said, for example, the Jets only promoted the only person the Jets kept from last year was Sean Jefferson on the coaching staff. That was not true, and I pointed it out in response to his tweet saying this is inaccurate. These other two guys that we kept, were also retained. And then he put out a new tweet saying, "Oh, thanks to Flatbush Frankie." Hat tip to Frankie, Flatbush Frankie. These other guys were also retained, right? So I corrected him, and he works for the Associated Press. And I'm Frankie from Flatbush with 158 followers on Twitter, right? Just a nobody. But that being said, if you do it in a respectful way, if you do it in an artistically correct way, when you're not just calling people names and stuff like that, you can sometimes help them do their job better, which is really what I want. I just want good reporting that's accurate. That's what I want. I'm not exactly a big request. Jet 41 Rosenblatt is so awful. Yeah. Yeah, but he works for the Athletic. I mean, the reason Rosenblatt is relevant. So the three most relevant beat reporters that we have are Cimini, Rosenblatt, and Connor Hughes. The reason those three are relevant, the most relevant, and then you could throw in Robbie Sabo just because he's the independent sort of guy. But the reason they're relevant and the reason they're the only ones who ever break news is because of their organizations that they work for. It's not because of them. They don't do anything, really. When they break news, they're just receiving text from agents. That's all they're doing. I've received a text and now I shall put it out on Twitter. Okay. Wow, that's groundbreaking skill that you have. No, it's that they work for ESPN, The Athletic, and SNY. And those are real media organizations, especially The Athletic because it's owned by the New York Times. The Athletic itself isn't a big deal. The New York Times is a big deal. Some reason I was looking at, when I was doing that media documentary, I started to look at because the New York Times is a public company, you can see their financials. And their financials are outstanding. To be quite honest with you, they have a lot of freaking money. I think if somebody tried to buy the New York Times today, I think it would probably cost you about two billion. Which, if you think about it, the Jets are $7 billion. The New York Times is $2 billion. That's a lot of. That is a very good business for the owners. And Carlos Slim is a minority owner. You look up who Carlos Slim is. He's not a man to be messed with, I'll tell you that much. But because The Athletic is owned by the New York Times, Rosenblatt has that institutional gravitas, you could say, and he can tap into the network of all the other athletic reporters. So if something goes on with the Panthers and some obscure guy that we pick up from the Panthers or something, Rosenblatt can just call the beat reporter for the Panthers and say, okay, give me the lowdown on this guy, what's going on? And then, boom, he's got his column. And it's very easy. So once you work for these companies, it is very easy. All the agents send you the information and you just relay it. And anything else, you're either in the room because of your credential, so you just write up what the people said and throw in, some statistics and whatever, easy. Um, or you're just calling up colleagues who will and people who will take your call because you say you're Rich Samini from ESPN. No one's going to take a call from Rich Samini if he's just Rich Samini. But if he says, this is Rich Samini from ESPN. I'd like to talk to you about da 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 da." You're going to be like, "All right, I'd like to have a relationship with ESPN. I'm going to call Rich Samini back and talk to him." Same thing with the Athletic. Same thing with SNY to a lesser degree. So that's what it is. So you could say Rosenblatt is awful, which he is, but you also have to kind of understand his position in the universe of media. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's why that's one of the reasons I am following these independent outlets so much. So that story about MLB buying a stake in John Boy Media should make us all happy, at least to some degree, because John Boy Media, think about it, John Boy Media. What? It's a guy called John Boy? What is going on? That is an indication. That's a bellwether that things are changing. And let's see what these independent media companies do when they're properly capitalized. Now, maybe they're going to go to shit and they're going to be like, they're going to watch what they say. They say this isn't going to happen, but they're going to watch maybe they're going to watch what they say. Maybe they're going to ruin their content. Things could go off the rails. Just because you get capital doesn't mean you're going to be successful. It's good for the owners of the company. They're going to be financially well off, and that's good. They built up a company. But but the idea is that this is a bellwether, and that other companies. I mean, how many VC firms, PE firms, angel investors are going to look at that headline and go, "Wait a minute, Major League Baseball is investing in John Boy. Maybe we need to step up our sports investing in independent media, in All City, in Roundtable Sports, in somebody." Should want to invest in Jets X Factor, and they have Knicks X Factor now. I mean, somebody should want to take that and make it a real business. To be honest with you, there should be a merger between Jets X Factor and Badlands. Badlands has all that stuff with Parkinson and Caparoso and Rogers, basically. Well, Jets X Factor and Badlands should merge, and then somebody should capitalize that entity and really pour fire on that. That's really what needs to happen. Let's see if it does. Because there's no reason that there should be a Badlands and then a Jets X Factor. All of those things should be under one roof, in my opinion. Jet 41 tried watching Will's pod with ZR. This one I had to turn it off. Yeah, Jet 41. I will often watch the Flight Plan podcast with Rosenblatt and then write notes up on this channel for that very reason, because it's hard to watch it. But this way, I take notes on what they say and then I put my commentary in there. Now, I don't always do that. The latest one, I didn't have time. But you could look for that where I do a summary where you get the information. You don't have to listen through. You can just read my, where I write, here's the salient points that they said, and then I'll put my commentary like this is false, this is nonsense, whatever. So that's an alternative. Moulin Labe, head of a Mexican cartel? Well, is he a head of a Mexican cartel? That's the rumors. But officially, no, he's a businessman out of Mexico. Officially. As a non-USA Jet fan, I listen to people I like, so I don't waste time on Rosenblatt or Chimney. I go straight to Frankie or Bean. Yeah, and that's good, but we need to be informed about what the mainstream media is saying also. So like Bean and I need to get our information from somewhere, right, Phil? And so we go to original sources. Like I watch the press conferences whenever I can as an original source. But the problem there is the beat writers are the one in the room asking the questions. I don't get to ask questions. So, yes, it's good to stick to independent sources if you want, but then those independent sources have to get their information from somewhere. So there's different ways to do that. Jet 41. I don't watch or read anything from the MSM anymore. All right. But you got to watch your, got to keep your, got to watch your independent sources. Make sure they're got the right information. All right. Couple more news items, then we'll do any chat, and then we'll be out of here for the day. Did you know the New York Jets are hiring as a business analyst? Maybe you want to join the Jets. Would you like to be on the Jets? Well, they're hiring a business analyst. Check this out. This is an entry-level position. You can get to work at beautiful Florham Park, New Jersey. You can work in New Jersey where you can't even pump your own gas. But you can be a financial data analyst, database marketing, analytics, business intelligence, IT database management, CRM, and you can earn $70,000 to $90,000 a year. Now that's a pretty good salary for an entry-level position. All right, let's see what this position's doing. This in-person position means you got to show up at the office, is responsible for supporting the overall data strategy of the business intelligence and analytics department, while working closely with the premium and sponsorship departments. The position will contribute through the entire data analytics life cycle, including data acquisition, data hygiene, that means cleaning it up, reporting, analytical modeling, and business application. Additionally, the role will proactively find areas of opportunity to streamline internal processes, develop automation, and build scalable data solutions. These are the essential responsibilities here. And through looking at this, we see that they use Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and they also use Power BI and SQL. Now, they're using Microsoft Dynamics CRM. That's interesting to me. What's the number one CRM in the world? What's the number one CRM in the world? Well, it's not Microsoft Dynamics CRM. It's the one run by Mark Benioff, that company. And so it's interesting that they're not using the number one CRM in the world. But they are using Power BI and SQL and things like that. So interesting. You only need 1 to 2 years of experience, but you need a bachelor's degree in a quantitative field, such as data analytics, computer science, statistics, mathematics, operations research, or economics. And then you need to know how to use Microsoft Dynamics 365, SQL, and then Excel and other Office products. So if you want to join the Jets, you can do so as a business analyst. So let's get some people in there who know what they're doing. All right, so I just wanted to bring that to folks' attention. And then speaking of the mainstream media, we do have a new column this morning from Rich Spielman. He's really trying to scratch out some news in this dead period for the Jets. Jets running back Breece Hall ready to prove he's the guy. All right. Pivotal year, Breece Hall has some motivation. I'm not entitled to anything, Hall said. I'm around a new GM, new coaches, a lot of new faces. So for me, I've got to prove I'm the guy every day. All right. So Breece Hall, honeymooner, like all coaches. Glenn will be judged on wins and losses in the fall, but it's not a stretch to say he won the offseason. Hooray, we won the offseason again. You know that Spielman must have loved writing that sentence. You know? Yay, the Jets won the offseason again. Whoo! Yeah. The first-year coach captured the attention of players, raising the intensity. From a messaging standpoint, Glenn sounds like his mentor, Bill Parcells. He stresses situation football and physical play, noting there will be more live tackling. That is something that came out this week. We're going to be doing more live tackling in training camp. Now, at first blush, you're going to say, yeah, this is great because we're terrible at tackling. And one of the reasons we were probably terrible at tackling is because we didn't practice it. You got to practice it to get better at it, right? Now, that sounds good, and I'm happy about it. But at the same time, This means probably an increase in what? Injuries. So if we increase the live tackling and we get through training camp relatively unscathed with injuries, then that'll be a very good thing because then we'll have done the tackling and not gotten bitten by the injury bug. So let's pray and hope and cross fingers and all. But that's that's an interesting thing. So we are going to do that, and it'll be interesting to see if everybody's all enthusiastic about that if we have a big injury. So just keep that in mind. Glenn also is a believer in one-on-one conversations, and that's excellent, obviously. As several players mentioned, they've had private time with the coach. That's something you learned from Parcells. Before you can push a player's buttons, you must know what makes him tick. Yeah, so that's excellent. Glenn trying to navigate the delicate balance between a disciplinarian and players coach, blah, blah, blah. Aaron who? From the moment he was introduced at his news conference, Glenn made it clear he has no interest in talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's now on the Steelers. Rodgers and the Steelers are coming to Get a Life Stadium for the season opener. It's a huge story. I wouldn't say it's a huge story. It's a 1 o'clock game. It's an interesting story. Sounds like a coach who doesn't want his team to be swept up in the Rodgers angle, creating a potential distraction. Post minicamp takeaways. Here's the takeaways that Chimney had. A few quickie observations. Easy to see why they fell in love with Justin Fields in free agency. The raw talent is there, but he needs to be more consistent. Yep. Josh Reynolds, as I've told you guys over and over and over again, Josh Reynolds is wide receiver 2, ahead of Allen Lazard, who's wide receiver 3 right now. Trade rumors. I wouldn't trade Allen Lazard for anything less than a third-round pick. Make it hurt for the Steelers. If they don't want to do it, fine. We'll keep him and let him block. That Rodgers has landed with the Steelers. If the Jets decide to move Lazard, a big if, it probably won't be until the end of preseason, but only if they're comfortable with their receiver depth. I wouldn't trade him for nothing. Make it hurt. You really want this guy? Third-round pick. Screw you, Rodgers. Why are we going to give Rodgers something he wants? Now, this is a story that continues to pop up, so I'm going to guess, since we've seen it so much, I'm going to guess there's actual validity to it. And if Myers beats out Tippmann, this is the center battle, then that'll be very disappointing for Joe Tippmann. We want Joe Tippmann to win that and win it decisively, and we want Josh Myers to be a high-quality backup. That's what we want. That's what we want. We don't want Myers to beat out Tippmann because that'll be very disappointing for Joe Tippmann. So it's a story that's not going away. This is now the 5th or 6th time I've seen this mentioned by reporters. When that happens, it means it's probably real and not bullshit. So it probably is real, but what we have to hope is that Tippmann wins and then plays well, going into the season so that there's no question next year. Depth should be a concern on all 3 levels at the defense. Well, I wouldn't say the defensive backfield, but yeah, the first 2 levels, yeah. Big drop-off after Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, and Michael Clemens. He threw Michael Clemens in here. So a lot of people want us to release Michael Clemens. We don't have anybody to replace Michael Clemens. So I don't think he's getting released. Somebody wants to trade for him, okay, but we're just going to release him for nothing when we got nobody to back him up? Nobody to take his place? Get ready to see a lot of blitzing. Should be more blitzing. We'll see. Saving up for a splurge or 2. Yeah, we're going to sign Garrett and Sauce. Oh, this is actually interesting. Family ties. Discussing his ongoing contract negotiations, Gardner mentioned his team. It's not your typical team of agents because it includes someone he's known his entire life, his big brother Alante. Alante, Gardner, you don't hear a lot about Alante, Gardner. Alante isn't a certified agent yet, but he's the vice president of Vayner Sports, the firm that it represents Gardner. Co-founder A.J. Vaynerchuk is handling the actual negotiations with Gardner working behind the scenes. He knows football. He played at Saginaw Valley State and Lakeland University. Okay. Now, what else do we know about Vayner Sports? Anybody know? What else do we know about Vayner Sports? They mention AJ, but what they don't mention is the other co-founder who is very, very wealthy, and his name is Gary Vaynerchuk. Do we know who Gary Vaynerchuk is? Anybody in the chat? Any clue? You guys know who Gary Vaynerchuk is? Anybody know? Anybody familiar? Anybody familiar? Looks like you people in the chat don't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is. You got to keep up with these people, man. Gary Vaynerchuk is very wealthy, very popular on social media, and he owns many businesses, one of which is Vayner Sports. And his goal is to eventually own the Jets. So one of the reasons, and he's known as like one of the number one Jet fans. He's always at the draft. He's one of these crazy fans, but he's very, very wealthy. And his goal is to own the Jets. So if you're looking for an out of Woody Johnson eventually, then Gary Vaynerchuk would be someone that you would want at least in the ownership group. His brother is called AJ Vaynerchuk, who gets mentioned here, but the other co-founder is Gary Vaynerchuk, who's much more well-known in the world. He's famous. You can find him on YouTube. He does all kinds of business content. You can find him on X. You can find him all over the place. He's an early investor in Twitter, in Facebook, in many different things. And he owns many different businesses, including this Vayner Sports, which they are agents. And apparently they hired Sauce Gardner's brother as a vice president. So, and it's not hard to become a certified agent. I'm sure he just has to take the test. It's not hard. I could become a certified agent, I'm pretty sure. But what does that mean for us? Gary Vaynerchuk and AJ Vaynerchuk are extremely deep Jet fans. They go to all the games. They've watched every snap of the Jets since they were kids, since the 80s. They are very intense Jet fans. So does that mean that Sauce is going to get a deal, like a discount? I don't think so, because I think Vayner Sports is not going to. I think Vayner Sports is just another agency like any other agency. I don't think Gary and AJ are going to give us a hometown discount just because they're Jet fans. They got to do right by their clients. First of all, that would be a fiduciary. They could probably get sued. That's a fiduciary issue. You have to do what's right for your client. And so I don't think they're going to give us any kind of discount or anything like that. I do think they'll get a deal done. And when they do, I think this is going to be one of their first huge deals. Like Sauce obviously is going to get a big, massive deal. He might be the number one or number two paid cornerback on an AAV basis in the league. And I think this is their first deal of that magnitude. Vayner Sports. Vayner Sports also represents an example. Vayner Sports also represents Tyler Conklin. So why the hell didn't we get Tyler Conklin back when he signs for $3 million for the Chargers? Well, obviously the Jets just didn't want him for anything more than $3 million, or didn't want him for any price for some reason. But it's not like Vayner is going to put guys on the Jets. Their main agent, by the way, is a guy named Mike McCarthy, Michael McCarthy, a different Mike McCarthy, not the coach. Michael McCarthy, and I guess Vaynerchuk, AJ, is probably a certified agent as well. But like I said, it's not hard to become a certified agent. But I don't think, even with his brother there, I don't think they're going to give the Jets any kind of deal, any kind of discount. I really don't. But I do think, of course, they want Sauce on the Jets. It's good for everyone. It's good for Sauce. It's good for the Jets. So, interesting Interesting turn. I did not know that Alante Gardner was part of Vayner Sports. That's interesting. It's also interesting. The Alante should become an agent, and then he can go out to a lot of the he can go out to players. These agents have to sell themselves. Why should I sign with you? I can go to Rosenhaus. I could go to Athletes First. I could go to CAA. Why am I going to go to Vayner? Well, Alante can sell himself. Hey, I'm Sauce Gardner's brother. I know about it. Look at the deal Sauce got. Hey, cornerbacks. You want to be over here? Want to be with the best? Hey, want to be with Sauce? Hey, sign with Vayner. So it's very interesting, and we'll see what becomes of it. But I don't think we're getting any kind of discount out of that or anything like that. Why bring Conklin back? Because for $3 million, he was plenty good with the Jets. What are you even talking about, Harlan? Did you watch the fucking games, or did you put on a blindfold? He didn't get 1,000 yards. Did you watch the games, or what kind of comment is this, Harlan? Give me a break. For $3 million, that's why. Because of the surplus value he would bring. Who are we going to play? Stone Smart? How good was he? That's dumb. Dumb comment, Harlan. Sorry, bro. Got to call you out on that one, bro. Couching it. Defensive end Jermaine Johnson is grateful that the organization exercised his fifth-year option, guaranteeing his salary for 2026. There was some risk involved, considering he ruptured his Achilles in week 2. But he's back. Now, here's someone they should probably bring back. What about C.J. Mosley? Why can't we bring C.J. Mosley back for a couple million? He still spends time in New Jersey, keeps in touch with former teammates. I mean, he could be linebacker 4. Is C.J. Mosley not better than the linebackers we have as linebacker 4? And smart as he is? Both Quincy and Jamie and Sherwood said they lean on him for leadership advice. I don't understand why they can't bring CJ back for a couple million more. Why not? He's better than what we got at linebacker 4 and 5. And we have the money. We have the cap space. Definitely a hole in the wall without him. Hole in the wall. That's weird. But we could still bring CJ back. He spends time in New Jersey. That means he's got a house there. Why not? Doesn't seem to be a hot commodity in the market. He's better than what we got. Let's bring him back. I mean, who are we going to spend our money on? We got all this cap space. Who the hell are we spending the money on? We have to spend it. We got to spend it. Yeah, Conklin's, yeah, of course he is. I mean, you think the Chargers and Harbaugh don't know what they're doing? I mean, of course they do. They got a deal with Tyler Conklin. They got a deal. They got a good deal, but he's represented by the Vayners, so they couldn't put him back with the Jets. So there we go. That's the latest Cimini column. Walter's here. Good to see you, Walter. Just checking these latest news things. We did this one. Oh yeah, so Joe Blewett has a film breakdown on Andrew Beck, as I told you. As soon as I do something on anybody, all the people start doing it. So I would encourage you to watch that though, because I didn't do a film breakdown on Andrew Beck, but I showed you some playbook stuff. All right. So I don't think there's anything else. So let me know if there's anything you want to talk about in the chat. Front office being cheap. Well, they weren't being cheap. They just don't want. They just don't want. They didn't want Conklin for some reason. At a cost of $3-4 million is kind of crazy considering how thin our tight end room is. Even if he would be tight end two, like isn't he better than Ruckert? Yeah, he's 10,000 times better than Ruckert. So for $4 million, why not? Even if he's tight end three, we want Ruckert to do something. Okay, well, then he's tight end three. Just looking around. Father's Day stuff. Do 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 do. All right, so let me know if there's anything else you want to talk about in the chat. Otherwise, we'll call it a day on this Sunday, Father's Day, June 15th. 2025. Ruckert will have a good season this year. We don't know what Ruckert is. Ruckert has been terrible with us so far. Let's hope Ruckert has a good year this year. Let's hope he can catch the ball. How about it? Let's hope he can block somebody. Hoping and wishing are two different things than knowing. Phil Adams says, Greenheart Jets football. Well, Conklin is a guy who has a proven track record, and Ruckert has not proven he can do anything in the league other than screw up and drop passes. So, Ruckert, you're hoping and wishing. Conklin has a proven track record. He can get you easy 4, 5, 600 yards ish, and be okay. He's not great. I mean, he's not great, but it's hard to find great tight ends. It really is. How many teams have one? Not many. So the idea was that Conklin, was solid, and if all you need to pay him is $4 million, that's a bargain. That's cheap in the NFL. Some people were saying Conklin was going to get a $10 million contract. Well, he didn't. He got a $3 million. So if you could get him for $4, and you're going to get solid production out of him, and he's a good dude, which he is, why not? It seemed like a mistake by Mougey to me. Walter says training camp will give you a lot to talk about. Yeah, but that's 5, 6 weeks away. How are we going to make it till then, Walter? We got 5 or 6 weeks left to get there. Yeah, so there's not a lot of headlines. We talked about some of the business stuff. We talked about the Samini column. We talked about some of the media stuff. But that's all because mostly there's not a lot to talk about. And the Jets have not used their post June 1 cap space that they got on anyone. So, what are we going to talk about? PC Salami finally makes it here over from Asia. Well, not bringing Mosley back could just be ideological about getting younger, and also another sign that this is really a tank season. Well, then they're liars. So about the tank season, if that's the case, then they're just liars, PC, because they lied to the fans and they lied to the players that we're trying to win now. So I'm going to try to not call them liars at this point. Getting younger is fine, but it depends what you feel about Zaire Barnes and Kiko Mawagoa and all these people, and Jamin Davis. Now, if you think those guys are better than CJ Mosley at this point in time, all right. But I don't. Not for a linebacker 4. I mean, who's our linebacker 3? Jamin Davis? Who's our third linebacker? I mean, even if you wanted to bring him back for linebacker 3 just to be a guy to pound, just to be your heavy hitting linebacker in your base defense when you're pretty sure the other team is running the ball, that's a good role for CJ Mosley. Who's going to play that role? Kiko Mawagoa? Zaire Barnes? Jamin Davis? Hello? We got nothing. Those players are nothing. Now, maybe they're going to be amazing, but so far they've been nothing, and we just drafted them and we have no idea. But Kiko Mawagoa was like the 20th ranked linebacker coming out in the draft. He's going to be good. He's going to play better than a C.J. Mosley, just in a part-time role. I mean, the third linebacker on our team is hardly ever on the field. You get ten, maybe 10 snaps, 5 to 10. That's it. And so, wouldn't you want C.J. Mosley playing 5-10 snaps rather than Zaire Barnes or Jamin Davis? Who are these people? Nobody. So for me, if I could get CJ to come back for $3 million, I got the cap space. It doesn't hurt my cap. It's a 1-year deal, and plus the players love him, and he's super smart. And now you have him in the room, and he comes in for 5 to 10 snaps per game and just stuffs the run, helps us stuff the run. I like it. Why not? Who else is going to do that? Zaire Barnes, Kiko Malagoa, the 20th ranked linebacker in the draft. Hey. Yeah, Walter says they're not going to tank. I mean, I don't think they are going to tank. Certainly the players aren't going to tank. And I don't think everything we've seen, you know. Now, you want to say they want to get younger? All right. But that would mean somebody's better than CJ, you know. Any info on the 2 free agents? The defensive end has some promise. No. Let's pull it up. So I wrote this up. Where did I write it up? So I would recommend everybody check out some of these community tabs. I use these community tabs to write stuff up sometimes, and I'll give you a lot of times, like a lot of information on certain players, like bios. Kingsley Jonathan. So here's what I wrote. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, this is probably the best point right here. Part of AG's plan is clearing out the old guard. Yeah. So CJ Mosley, going back to CJ Mosley, would go against this. He wants players to look to him for everything. Yeah. So that's a fair point by Phil. Fair point, Phil. Fair point. That's a fair point. But still, everybody loves CJ, though, including me. So here's what I wrote. Breaking. Jets signed 2 tryout players. The Jets signed 2 of the guys they had in as tryout players during Mandy Mini as follows. Guard Marquise Hayes and defensive end Kingsley Jonathan. To make room on the 90-man, they released Trace Willing and Zach Bailey. The TLDR is that these are P squad level players. No change to 53-man depth needs. Jonathan is from Nigeria, so we got a bunch of guys from overseas, including the right tackle we drafted. Standing 6'4", 260. So this guy's 260 pounds. That's not big enough. He went to Syracuse, so that's why some people were getting excited, because there's a lot of people in media from Syracuse. Appeared in 56 games, 15 tackles, 15 sacks in 56 games. 2019, he had 1.5 sacks in the ACC. So, 2020, 3 sacks. Woohoo! In the ACC. So, 2021 had 4.5 sacks, man. This guy is a sack machine. Again, earning academic accolades. So, smart guy. Professional career, he went undrafted. So then he signed with the Buffalo Bills. He was a top pick in the CFL Global Draft, but he chose the NFL. After being waived by the Bills, he joined the Chicago Bears. Returned to the Bills practice squad. These are practice squad players. 2024, he played 1 game in Buffalo, totaling 10 career tackles. Then he was released, signed, blah, blah, blah. And Jonathan's name, Chukwuemeka, means God has done it. Aha. Here's Marquise Hayes. He's a guard. So this is a guy who's going to compete, probably be on our practice squad. He was a 7th round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, was on injured reserve to an injury, remained on the practice squad, practice squad, practice squad. So these are P squad level players. They'll come in and compete, but I wouldn't expect them to make the 53 man. These are people who could maybe be on our practice squad. And I put out a little poll. How do you feel about these roster moves? 38% of the people who voted said great. 33% said good. Probably the correct answer was meh. And so only 26% of the people got this right. This isn't an oh the pain bro move, but these are meh moves. You know, practice squad guys, extreme depth. They're not going to move the needle. With the caveat that you never know. Maybe Kingsley Jonathan's going to take steroids this year and suddenly get super strong. We don't, something something could always happen. It's football. Weird things happen, but generally speaking, no. Practice squad players are practice squad players. So, but these things are called posts here in YouTube. So I like to I wish that YouTube would use this more and show this to people more when people write things here. Like this isn't even, there's not even a rich text editor here. I can't put bold or italics or anything. Well, YouTube is just, I don't know. But anyway, so sometimes I'll write this up here. Sometimes I'll put it on my X account. I would suggest following me on X at Flatbush Frankie. But sometimes I just put it right here in YouTube. PC says, I've been here, just lurking. Lurking. All right, you were lurking. Tired and not so chatty today. So those who don't know, in PC's world, it's late night. Late night with Salami. So he's over there on the other side of the world. We got Frankie people all over this joint, all over this planet. And PC's, so it's late night for PC. Walter, I'm looking forward to what Glenn gets out of Fields. Yeah. One of the things I'm going to be keeping track of, Walter, I don't know if you ever join us when we're doing the watch alongs, but if you do, you'll notice I keep my little drive charts, right? Like this is what it looks like right here. And so when I'm doing the watch alongs with Green Bean this year, assuming that I haven't heard from Green Bean in a while. Green Bean, if you're out there, hit me up. Let me know everything's okay. It's hard to watch other channels' content, by the way, when you're a content creator. It's just not enough time in the day. So I don't know what Green Bean's been up to lately, but if I'm over there watching with him, I'm keeping my drive charts. And one of the things I'm going to be keeping track of this year that I didn't ever previously is how many RPOs are we running? Like if it plays an RPO, I'm going to track that. And then the reason to do that is to figure out what percentage of the plays that we run are RPOs. That's one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing with this staff and with Justin, because I want to know that information, because we should be running, something like 35, 40, 45% RPOs, some high percentage. And in case you didn't see my video about Justin Fields and what happened with the Steelers, they were in the 6 games that he started for the Steelers, they ran an RPO about 5% of the time. I watched all the games and I tracked it, and they were running about 5% RPOs. And RPOs is one of the best things that Justin can do. I mean, it's one of his superpowers. There's a lot of reasons for that, both in the passing game and in the running game, actually. And so the fact that Arthur Smith only ran at 5% with him, to me, is an indictment of Arthur Smith. That to me, no matter what the man says, he's just going to run his system, and he doesn't care who the quarterback is. He's just going to run what he wants to run, and the quarterback just has to adjust. In other words, we're not going to adjust the system to who we have at quarterback. We have one of the great RPO quarterbacks in the league. We're not going to run that. We'll run it 5% of the time. That's stupid, in my opinion. That's very, very stupid. And so I'm hoping that our coaching staff now that we have here is not very, very stupid. and that's going to be one of the indications. how do you how do you tell if the coaching staff is stupid or not? Well, are they catering their systems to the players that they have? And on offense, the main player you have is called the quarterback. And so you need to have a system that works for the skill sets that the quarterback has. And in this case, it's very clear what we have in Justin, which doesn't mean we're not going to run traditional running plays. We are. Doesn't mean we're not going to run traditional pass plays. We are. But what percentage of the offense is going to be RPO based? And I'm saying it needs to be at least 30, 35, 40, somewhere in there. And I'm going to track it, Walter, and I will come back and tell you guys about it in subsequent videos. So I keep the data with my little drive chart sheets, right? And then I take the data and I translate it into percentages and data visualization and all. And then I'm going to do videos saying this is what we're doing and look at how it compares to what the Steelers did, and look at the success or lack of success that we're having, whatever it may be. And we're going to look at the personnel groups and look at all the columns that I have here. This is all data that I keep track of. And then I'm going to translate it into data visualization. You saw that the ad for that job for the Jets with data visualization. Well, we do data visualization here in the Frankie from Flatbush channel in FSPN uh, to show, and we're going to do videos to show here's what's going on with the Jets, and here's how successful we've been. Are we scoring a lot of points? Are we not? Here's why. Maybe we're not scoring as many points as we should. Maybe because we're not running as many RPOs as we should, for example. And then I'll be very upset. Or we're running tons of RPOs and wow, look, we're scoring 27 and a half points per game. Look at this. Perfect. We got a smart coaching staff. And that'll actually be one of the more encouraging things. If we're seeing that happen, then we should be encouraged about the future, even if maybe we're not winning. Maybe the defense is getting killed, which I'm worried about. But if that's happening, at least on the offensive side of the ball, we should be happy, and then we should then worry about defense after that. But Phil Adams says Bean is on vacation at present, largely taking a break from the Jets. Yeah, he does a lot of content, during the year, and then through the draft, and then when it's I think he does that every year where he pretty much takes a break. And there's not a lot to talk about here. I mean, I'm talking about the business side and the media and all this stuff. So when you're doing that, there's not a lot of normal kind of content that you would have. Walter says, I can't believe they benched Fields when he had a winning record. Yeah, he was 4-2. Watch the video. It's even worse than that, actually, because the two games he lost by 3 points. And one of them was a last-second loss to Dak Prescott and the Cowboys through a touchdown with like 20 seconds remaining. Otherwise, it would have been 5-1 or even 6-0. But they really wanted to go with Russell Wilson for some reason. And I think that's one of the reasons that we were able to get Justin, because I don't think he wanted to go back there. I think he was like, well, you guys yanked me out. I was playing well, and he was, even with the fact that they were only doing. If you think about it, the fact that he went 4-2 with a plus 38 point differential, and the two games he lost were by 3 points each time, and he did all that running Arthur Smith's dumb system where he wasn't running RPOs. What does that tell you what he could do if he's running 25, 30% RPOs, right? What if he's running a system that's designed for him? What could he do then? Now, it is true that they were low-scoring games mostly, although he was getting better and better and better as the season went along, and I show in that video how exactly I measure that. He was getting better and better and better, but a lot of the early wins were like low-scoring games that they kicked a lot of field goals. That's true. Wasn't scoring a ton of touchdowns, but he was like I say, he was getting better and better and better as the season was going along, and he had his best game was the 6th game, and it was surprising. And again, he's running a system that was for Russell Wilson. It wasn't running the Justin Fields centric system. So I think, hey, I think we got to thank Mike Tomlin for doing that, because I think Justin was like, well, you guys, didn't treat me very well, so I'm gonna go sign with the Jets. and maybe they'll treat me better. And look at how we treated him. We've treated him. He's QB1, yeah, and we'll hopefully run a system that's designed for him, and that gives him the best chance of success. Doesn't mean he will be successful, but I think that's the optimistic case for the Jets in terms of their offense. And then, um, then we got to see about this defense, and that's the way it is. Meta Trends Mark. Yes, I know Gary Van. I guess you mean Gary Vaynerchuk. Well, you should. I mean, every Jet fan should know who Gary Vaynerchuk is. He's like the most famous Jet fan. Well, that's not true. I mean, Rich Eisen's a Jet fan, and Greeny's a Jet fan, and a lot of people in the media are Jet fans for some freaking reason. But Gary Vaynerchuk is one of the most famous Jet fans of all time. He was at almost all the he was at the uh, when we took the tight end over Warren Sapp. He was there. He was at Radio City Music Hall with his brother AJ. And I think I think they've gone to every draft probably, and they're in that like bunch of Jet fans. I think the Hulk Hands guy and the other, the other famous Jet fans, license plate guy or whatever. But they're always part of that, and so he's a. And then if you're into business, you could listen to his ideas about business. You could like him or not. He's kind of like a he's kind of like a hustler. But I mean, the guy's been extremely successful, running multiple business. He must have 10, 12 businesses. I mean, it's crazy how many businesses this guy has. He's very energetic. All right. So, unless there's any other questions, comments, concerns, topics that you guys want to talk about, we'll end it for today. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate your subscription. We're trying to get up to 1,000. We're at 715 or so. So we're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers. A long way to go. We'd appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel. We think that we provide differentiated content here on the Frankie from Flatbush channel, differentiated from all the other content creators on YouTube, which there are many, many, many Jets content creators on YouTube. But we think that the Frankie channel provides differentiated content, things that other content creators don't talk about, at least until I put out a video and then they copy me and get thousands of views. But nonetheless, we think we're a little different here. And if you agree, please subscribe. It's free. Otherwise, just give the video a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. And consider joining the Inner Circle. We got the Inner Circle is the middle category if you want to support the channel sort of monetarily every month. And then we got the inner square if you want to go a little cheaper, and the inner triangle if you want to go a little heavier with the dollars. And we'd appreciate that. Walter says, Fields at Pittsburgh, ergo, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah. Well, but they, as soon as Russell Wilson got healthy, they were like, and they said something, Mike Tomlin said something very weird. He was like, that's why I'm very well compensated. When they asked him, why'd you make this change? Fields was doing well. And he said, well, that's why I'm very well compensated. And, which was a strange thing to say. And Russell Wilson started doing good at first. They were playing well, and everybody said, well, I guess Tomlin knows what he's doing. And then it fell apart at the end of the season. They limped into the playoffs, got their butts kicked in the playoffs, and out they went. And if that happens again this year with Aaron Rodgers, I think Tomlin's getting fired. I mean, let's think about this for a second. If Mike Tomlin gets fired in Pittsburgh, what team will pick him up? I mean, what if Mike Tomlin was available and the Dolphins don't make the playoffs this year? You think they would fire McDaniel and hire Tomlin? So now we got Mike friggin' Tomlin in the AFC East? That would be something. Or how about the Browns? What about the Browns, man? Let's say the Browns have a disappointing season. They don't make the playoffs again. You think they would they would get rid of Stefanski and Barry and get rid of all of them and get rid of Deshaun Watson and just bring in Tomlin? That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting. What other teams could Tomlin? I mean, Tomlin would be highly sought after. I think Stephen Ross would probably, if the Dolphins don't make the playoffs this year, which is very possible, I think Stephen Ross would probably finally fire Chris Greer and McDaniel and start over. Yeah, yeah, 19, 20 years. And he loves Pittsburgh. He does a lot of charity work there and et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, the fans are getting tired of his act. I mean, believe it or not. Now they're very spoiled up there in Yinsburg, but they're getting tired of, winning season but not really a Super Bowl contending team, you know. And the fans are getting very, very tired of it. And so at some point ownership, you know, probably move on from Tomlin. Who would they hire to replace him would be a good question. I don't really know. But I mean, at some point, Arlen says, I don't think he'll get fired. Yeah, well, at some point, he's got to get fired because at some point, you got to do more than go 9-8, 10, 10-7, and just get bounced in the playoffs. At some point, ownership's going to be very fed up, and they're going to want a championship team. And look at what they've done since Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. They haven't done anything right. They tried Kenny Pickett, they tried all this stuff, and it hasn't worked out. So at some point, ownership's going to get fed up with Tomlin. I think the fans have had it. I mean, at some point, ownership has to listen to the fans if they get that upset about it. Yeah, it'd be easy for him to get another job. I think the Dolphins would look at that and say, this is an opportunity to just clean house. I mean, Chris Greer has been the GM of the Dolphins for a very long time, and they haven't won a playoff game the entire time. So, I mean, at some point, Chris Greer's got to be looked at and said, well, this guy's not doing a good job. They've cycled through a bunch of quarterbacks, a bunch of head coaches, and Chris Greer has just remained. So that'd be interesting if he came to the AFC East, to tell you that much. All right, so that'll do it for this version of Coffee with Frankie. Thanks for joining. I'll see you next week. Hopefully, we'll be able to get some videos onto the channel this week, but other priorities are still calling my name, so I can't promise that. I will try. We will see. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next Sunday for